All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim Rakakudash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rocalia from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. Tonight's lesson is going to be entitled, The Stage for Martial Law and Urban Warfare Has Already Been Set. All right, now the inspiration for tonight's lesson comes from this video I was watching from the Elder Bishop's live camp that took place a couple of weeks ago. And the elders were getting into, these different ICE raids that have been taking place around the country recently, and how eventually, once it trickles down and starts affecting the Southern Kingdom more, that could set precedent for these different foreign troops that have been housed and trained here in the Americas since the 60s, being deployed amongst these citizens, to ultimately enforce the fullness of the agenda of these elites, which is basically to corral and to eliminate you Israelites, but without further ado, we're going to play a couple of minutes of this video. We're going to grab a couple of precepts. Lord, when this is edifying unto you elect. All right, because the elders brought out a lot of beautiful information, on this live camp that you should really go listen to when you get the chance. Because this is all a part of Bible prophecy, and we're living in that time of martial law and urban warfare. What we're experiencing right now is the downfall of an empire. We're living in the midst of a failing empire, which means that there's going to be a period of martial law. There's going to be a period of urban warfare, just like the kingdoms that came and fell before it. So before I get into this, I actually want to get into that definition of what it is, what urban warfare is. All right, for those who didn't know. So I did a Google search, and urban warfare refers to armed conflict within towns and cities, characterized by its unique challenges due to the presence of dense populations, complex infrastructure, and close quarters combat. It differs significantly from warfare in open environments, presenting distinct operational and tactical challenges. Civilian presence. It says key characteristics of urban warfare. Civilian presence. Cities are typically densely populated, meaning civilians are often caught in the crossfire, making civilian protection a major concern. It says complex terrain, buildings, narrow streets, interdependent infrastructure areas all rely on complex infrastructure, water, electricity, transportation, which can be easily damaged or destroyed during conflict, further complicating operations and impacting civilian life. All right. And when you read 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter, all right, it's basically going into everything that we just read. All right, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15. And I'm going to start at verse 14. It says, Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands, which is basically going into the different class wars and race wars, all right, that are going to take place here pretty soon. All right, and there's a big class war that's being stirred up here in Babylon the Great due to the middle class being phased out by the elites, all right, which is beautiful because Esau truly is a niggard at his own table, and now that he's taken everything from everybody else, he's starting to take the different the small luxuries that the common Edomite has. All right, now that middle class is being phased out, which is affecting a lot of Edomites. It's going to lead to a class war, eventually. And there's also going to be a race war. Going to have Egyptian against Egyptian, like it says in Isaiah the 19th chapter. Because of, there's also racial tension that's being built up here as well. You have a lot of these Northern Kingdom jakes being snatched up, which is putting a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths over here, as well as, some of these Southern Kingdom jakes. A lot of so-called Jamaicans, a lot of so-called Haitians are being snatched up, and a lot of so-called Negroes are being snatched up in the crossfire as well. And that's going to continue to happen. And it's putting a bad taste in a lot of these American citizens' mouths, because the Esau is truly showing his hand. He's truly showing himself to be who he is, which is the devil that the Bible speaks of, and now this harsh reality is starting to hit a lot of people like a brick. Intentions are rising. Matthew 24 told us, that in the last days, it's like, let me get it. The love of many shall wax cold. This is Matthew chapter 24 and 13, I think. 12. It says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. All right. And when you go into that word love, so like it, wax cold, it goes into psycho. All right. Meaning Strong's G5594 psycho. It says, generally does different in one hand. It says to breathe, blow, cool by blowing, to be made or grow cold or cold. Let's look up that word for psycho. Or we could go ahead and look up the etymology. Bear with me for a second. We're going to get into it. All right. Definition for psycho: an unstable and aggressive person exhibiting unstable and aggressive behavior. All right, which is basically the characteristics of today's society. All right, it's very unstable, and you have an aggressive, wicked behavior. That's been taking place here. So going back, it says, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. And when you go into that word sedition on the etymology online, it goes into a concerted attempt to overthrow civil authority. All right, it says, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. All right, which is speaking about martial law. Okay, and we're coming into that time to where these cities are going to be shut down. All right, these cities are going to be shut down, and martial law is going to be enforced. And that stage has already been set, and it's been set and been prepared since the 60s, which the elders are going to get into. All right, this stage has been set by Esau starting in the 60s. All right, and now, it's getting ready to roll out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. But let's get into it.
I'm looking for. Hold up, and then on top of that, with the ICE, with ICE running around and grabbing up citizens, with them violating the Posse Comitatus Act, which forbids the standing military to be pretty much in any U.S. city. That's a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. Violating the Posse Comitatus Act. Now these soldiers, National Guard members or whoever, after a while, they're going to get tired of dealing with the bullshit. They're going to get tired of locking up. They're like, well, wait a minute, these are all American citizens. After a while, they're going to be like, nah, hands off. So then what they're going to do, they got assets that have been coming in here over the border for years. They have assets that have been coming from other countries. There's a group from Nepal known as the Gurkhas. And we've known about them since the mid-90s. The Gurkhas and German troops, since the mid-90s, have been training on U.S. soil, urban warfare on U.S. soil for years. Those assets are here in the United States, laying dormant, waiting for them to give them the okay. Because just like during the time of the American Revolutionary War, when America and Britain went to war with each other, the Redcoats the British weren't going to come and kill their American cousins. So King George III got the army that were known as the Hessians. He went to a man who was known as the Elector of Hesse and got his army and put the British red coats on the Hessians. So it was Hessian soldiers that came over here dressed up as British soldiers to fight against the American colonies, because the British soldiers wasn't going to come and kill their American cousins. So they had to get another group of people to come and do that job. The same thing's going to happen here. The soldiers here that they're sending into the Marines, whatever, that they're sending into these different cities for this ICE bullshit, after a while they're going to be like, nah, man, these are American citizens. What the fuck are we doing? So then they're going to send their assets in. And the assets are going to be dressed up like military. They're going to be dressed up like Navy, Air Force, Marine. They're going to be dressed up, but they're not. National Guard. They're going to be dressed up like them, but they're not actually National Guard soldiers from America. They're foreign troops, because they made a pact with the UN, and they've been training UN foreign troops on American soldiers since the mid-90s. Since the mid-90s. We're like freaking...
Right, and Salakia, I made a slip of the tongue. It wasn't the 60s, it was the mid-90s, like the elder just stated. You know, Salakia made a slip of the tongue. But they've been here. These foreign troops have been here since the 90s. You know,
something goddamn years into the future.
They're ready, man.
And they've been training urban warfare since the mid-90s. How to go into a city, into a project, and go through a project building and clean a project building out.
And why do you think they've been going through urban warfare? You know, like the elder just stated, to be able to sweep the projects, to be able to sweep these different neighborhoods that predominantly Israelites live in or inhabit quickly, you know, and efficiently. All right, because the whole goal, really, just like it was in ancient Rome, you know, why Nero burnt down Rome, is to basically persecute the Jews. And everything is happening nowadays for the elect's sake anyways. You know, the reason why Esau is coming down with that great wrath is because the word of the Lord is being brought out. You know, and in order to stop, you know, this great awakening, you know, in order to stop, you know, truth from going out, you know, he has to stop the prophets. But he can't pinpoint, you know, every single one. He's just going to take everybody out. You know, he's just going to take everybody out in one fell swoop. Everybody that's not down with his agenda, everybody that's not that's not complying with his mindset and where he wants to go with the world, he's going to wipe him out with one fell swoop. You know, if you want to get down with this RFID agenda, get him out of here.
Going through a housing project area. They've been training in abandoned areas here in the United States since the mid-90s. And those assets are going to be activated once that social unrest gets to where they want it, and even the soldiers start rebelling against the government's orders, the assets are going to be activated.
And that social unrest is boiling. It's boiling. All right, these different Trumpers, all right, are mad because they thought Trump was going to come in here and be their last great white hope and going to change everything, bring back America, you know, to the good old days. And he hasn't, which is caused civil unrest with a lot of these red-blooded Americans to go up, to skyrocket. All right, these civil unrest, these tensions are rising, man. They're rising on the daily, which is exactly what they want.
They kind of showed you that in the last purge. Was it the last purge, right?
The Forever Purge.
The Forever Purge. And they showed you they had foreign troops. I think there was on motorcycles and shit. But there was foreign troops that they contracted. And
they were speaking German. And but they were dressed up like skinheads and had crosses of Malta. They were riding on motorcycles. The first purge that took place in Staten Island, the movie. Yeah. And they showed you that it was the very first purge. And then they said, look, they're not killing enough people. So then they activated their assets. So the assets came in the guise of looking like neo-Nazi skinheads. But they were German soldiers.
And those assets are going to spoil and destroy, just like Esau need them to spoil and destroy. All right, because these different American troops, they're not going to spoil and destroy like they need to, like Esau need them to, because they're going to be going against essentially their own family members, you know, their own kin in a sense. That's why Esau going to send them foreign troops to really get the job done, to really spoil and destroy, as the scriptures say. Verse 18 says, "For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread." Let me see. Let me go down. All right, this is second Ezra 16 and verse 70. It says, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Then shall it be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in the fire." So it's going to come a time, as the scripture just said, that they're going to be wasting and spoiling and destroying, especially those that fear the Lord. But at the end of the day, as they do that, when Esau comes with that great wrath and the enemy comes in like a flood, those the Lord's chosen are going to be known amongst that, because that standard in Isaiah 59:19 is going to be uplifted in the elect's life. So as they come in with that flood, the Lord is going to be that pillar. As they come in spoiling and destroying, the Lord is going to be that strong state, that protection. But let's get back.
And they were speaking German to each other over the walkie-talkies that they were using. Go watch the first Purge. The first Purge is the what? That's the fourth movie. Is that the fourth or the third movie in the Purge?
Is that the last? Is either the last one or the one before the last?
It's the fourth one.
Yeah.
Because the Forever Purge is the fifth one. So it's the fourth movie. It's called Purge. It's called the first Purge. And they show you that in there. So they activated their assets because during the first Purge, the people who had to remain in Staten Island had to stay the whole night, and they would get a $5,000 bonus in the morning that they survived the purge. Yeah. So they were having basically a purge party outside, cooking and grilling, and then the killing started happening. So they're watching from afar on their satellites. They're like, they're not killing enough. So they activated their assets to go in there, went into a church, and aired a bunch of niggas out in the church. But looking like...
And you see, Esau used that tactic frequently, especially when it comes to these protests. You have a lot of these agent provocateurs, who are sent to basically kick off the dissension, to kick off the riotous nature, because a lot of these protests are peaceful. A lot of these different gatherings, are peaceful in a sense, and that's not what Esau wants. That's not according to his agenda. That's not going to help him forward his agenda. So you need different agent provocateurs who are going to stir up some type of mischief. And you have those even in the truth. Even in the truth, you have agent provocateurs who have been set up to try to give the ministry a bad rap, and to try to bring blame into the ministry in a sense. But the Lord ultimately is going to handle all of that. The Lord is going to handle all of that. Because at the end of the day, the victory has already been written for the elect. The elect already have the victory over any accusation, that this devil is getting ready to come with. We're not ignorant to those devices.
Neo-Nazi skinheads, but they weren't skinheads. They were foreign German troops. Foreign German contractors that they sent out there to go and get those death numbers up. Let's read on that.
Yep. Now, I got a scripture on that, but I want to finish Ephesians 5. And it says, "Wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Yahushua shall give you light." Right?
And that's the elect. The brothers that are...
Right. And now's the high time to wake out of sleep. Like it says in Romans the 13th chapter, "For now is our salvation nearer than when we believe." All right, now's the time to wake out of that stupor, that sleep, all right, that's been placed upon us here in America, Babylon the Great, and awaken to the light that the Lord has shined upon us in the form of this truth. All right, the Lord has given us the insight on everything that's getting ready to take place in this society as it falls. The Lord has given us an insight, into what, this devil is coming with and what we're dealing with. We're dealing against principalities and the wiles of the devil. All right, the Lord has given us an insight on our enemy, and the best way to prepare ourselves for this battle at hand is to put on the whole armor of the Heavenly Father, and to put our trust and our faith in the Lord to uplift that standard in our lives, just like he did our forefathers, here in this day and age. All right. But, with that being said, that's really all I had. Lord, this is edifying to you, elect. I just wanted to bring out, this information that the elders were bringing out, because we're living in that time, and especially as these different ice raids start to affect the Southern Kingdom more, that's going to set precedent for these foreign troops to be deployed. Because a lot of these, it's going to put a bad taste in a lot of these Americans' mouths, and they're not going to go forward with these orders that they're given. They're not going to go forward with them orders to corral and to eliminate, a lot of their so-called neighbors. So they're going to have to bring in them foreign troops like they did aforetime, with the civil wars to get things cracking. And like 2 Corinthians 2:11 says, we not ignorant to these devices. And at the end of the day, brothers, we have hope. All right, we have hope. Okay, the Lord said that these things will happen, and he said as they happen, he will uplift that standard for his elect. So we have a lot to look forward to concerning the mercy and salvation of the Lord. Lord, when will we be able to elect? With that being said, shalom, stay up.